Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday if you're following along with the math schedule here. We're going to get into a lesson now that's going to help us work on one of the biggest things, or probably the most important or key lesson for this dividing decimals chapter we've been working in. Hopefully yesterday you didn't have too much trouble getting the forms turned in, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. I did see a bunch already. Hopefully all set and going with that multiple choice stuff just to turn in some of the work we've had. Now we're going to continue in with some of the dividing decimals work to help us continue through this chapter. This is a big lesson where we're going to actually divide decimals by other decimals, okay? So this, like we've always said all year when we've worked with decimals, it really works the same as far as actually working out the math. It's just sometimes we have to take care of those decimals a little bit, either beforehand or in the middle of things or whatever it might be. So here, if we're dividing decimals by other decimals, it's like the biggest challenge, but really it's just taking care of a couple of things in the beginning of the whole work before we start actually solving the problems, okay? So I'm going to go through these first couple pages with you, and this is just kind of our introduction. The big part I'm going to focus on is this little beginning part here. It says when we multiply both the divisor and the dividend by the same power of 10, the quotient stays the same. That is going to be the key thing to keep in mind here. I like these examples they give us. I'm going to actually focus in on this one. So this is just a couple little things that kind of make sense to us, just as a way of walking through it. And then we'll start bringing in the decimals. Okay, so it says if we have a simple math fact like 6 divided by 3, we know that equals 2. If we multiply both of those by 10, like if we say 6 times 10 makes 60, and then 3 times 10 makes 30. If we divide those then, 60 divided by 30, that also still equals 2, okay? And that's kind of what they're getting at when they say this, when we multiply both divisor and dividend by the same power of 10, our quotient. So you might say, well, why would I need to do that? If I already know 6 divided by 3 is 2, like why would I bother going on with that? This is a good example that shows that this works. Again, if we do times 10 again, 6 times 10 makes 60, and then times another 10 makes 600. 30 times 10 makes 300, and then 600 divided by 300 equals 2. Again, that just shows us that that works when we multiply by those powers of 10. And so for now, that's going to really come in handy when we start doing the dividing with decimals by decimals, okay? We're going to start using that idea of if I multiply by a power of 10, it's actually going to kind of help me get rid of some of the decimals and help me think in whole numbers, okay? So I'm going to look at something we've done before. We would have done some work like this with our dividing decimals problems. What we've done so far is last week or before break we were doing problems that look like this, 5, 6 divided by 4, and those aren't too bad because they work out the same as 56 divided by 4. So let's just say, just to start us off, if we're going to do 56 divided by 4, we could think, okay, how many times does 4 go into 5? Well, that's going to be 1, and then I would say that makes 4, and then I can subtract 4, and that would give me 1 left over, right? So I can then bring down my 6. So I have 1, bring down my 6, I have 16. Then I can think how many times does 4 go into 16? Of course, that's 4 times. And that would make 16. So when I subtract those out, I'm left with 0. Okay, so that's, again, a good basic division process, long division we can do. So 56 divided by 4 is 14. It works the same way when we do 5 and 6 tenths divided by 4. It's just we had to take care of that decimal point ahead of time. So we had 5 and 6 tenths. We can put the decimal here, and then all the math kind of works out the same. We can say 4 goes into 5 once, subtract it out. I'm just going to write it in now. Bring down, 16 goes in 4 times. So notice there, 14, 1, and 4 tenths have the same digits, just the place value is different, okay? Now what we're going to do is start looking at problems like this. If I have 56 hundredths divided by 4 tenths, the problem there is right there I've got 0 and 4 tenths. It's hard to think how many times does 4 tenths go into 56 hundredths. But what we're going to do is use that powers of 10 knowledge that we just talked about to help us solve that, okay? Or help set it up in a way that's going to make it a little easier to understand. All right, so they're going to give us a couple examples here, and we're going to get down to something at the end that's going to make this super quick and easy. It's just like one thing to keep in mind before we start going in. So like when we saw these before, one thing to keep in mind is like as long as we put this decimal point where it goes, everything else works out the same like whole numbers. Here we have to do one other thing to take care of business before we start getting into the work that's going to basically allow us to think of this 4/10 as a whole number 4, which we're going to get to in a second. Okay, so it's all like we're just setting up to do things ahead of time that's going to allow us just to do basic long division after that. Okay, so here what we have is a problem with Matthew has 72 cents. He wants to buy stickers that cost 8 cents each. So how many stickers can he buy? Well, if we're going to find that out, we would have to do 72 hundredths divided by 8 hundredths. Now again, that's kind of hard to think of. How many 8 hundredths go into 72 hundredths? That can be a little confusing, but if we can do some rearranging with things, or think of that whole powers of 10 idea, if we multiply by powers of 10, we can basically get to where we're going to do just a basic fact. Okay, so what they have here is they have 72 hundredths. If we take that times 100, again, thinking about how we can use our knowledge of how those decimals work, and then we do 8 hundredths times 100. Let's talk about that part. If I have 0 and 8 hundredths, and I'm going to multiply that by 100. Remember some of the work we did earlier in this chapter was if I multiply by 100, that tells me I've got 2 zeros I need to skip, and so I can just use that whole idea of moving the decimal place 2 places over, 1 and 2, and then put my decimal point here. Okay, so that's how we can use that mental math we learned, and then we would find out, okay, well, if I take 0 and 8 hundredths times 100, that's just going to be the whole number 8. Now, dividing by 8s is a lot easier to think of as opposed to dividing by 8 hundredths. So now, if I do the same thing with my dividend, 72 hundredths times 8, think I'm going to go 2 jumps over, 1, 2, and that makes it the whole number 72. Now all of a sudden, I've taken a hard thing to think of, 72 hundredths divided by 8 hundredths, and I use a little bit of a math facts I know, like some of the things I can do with math, to just turn into 72 divided by 8, which of course we know that is 9, because now we've taken that and made that into a basic fact that we know the answer to. Okay, so in this case, we could say Matthew could buy 9 stickers. Now again, we start off with something that looks kind of tough, 72 hundredths divided by 8 hundredths, but then we use this idea of if we multiply both by the same power of 10, the answer works out the same. So really it all works out the same, we just make it a little easier for us to understand and look at by turning it into this basic fact that we know, 72 divided by 8. Okay, so that's going to be the big idea that we're kind of trying to look into here and make sure we can use that to help us understand how to divide decimals by other decimals. Basically, our goal is going to be to take our divisor and turn it into a whole number by using the powers of 10, and it's going to often be something just as simple as if we just use our mental math skills when we know we're multiplying by powers of 10, how we can move our decimal points. So I'm going to go down to this try this part here. Now it says if we have 56 hundredths divided by 7 tenths, we need to take that, basically our goal is to take that 7 tenths and make it a number 7, okay? The way we can do that is by multiplying by 10, which would mean, in this case, like we see over here, if we had 7 tenths like it was, 1 power of 10 means we can move a decimal 1 place to the right, and then we need to just do the same thing to the other number, to our to our dividend. Now, if we multiply our dividend by 10, let's think, what does that make? It doesn't make 56. We have 56 hundredths, and we're going to move it the same number of places that we did the divisor, okay? So our goal is to make that divisor a whole number, and then however we did that, we do the same thing to the dividend, okay? So notice here, if we go from 56 hundredths times 10, that's just 1 place over. So what number does that give us? That gives us 5 6 tenths. Again, not 56. We're not going to make that one a whole number. We're just going to do whatever it is that we needed to do to our divisor, do the same thing to the dividend. That way, if we multiply both by 10, it all works out the same to where we'll have our answer will work out for us. So now we're going to think, okay, 56 hundredths, or sorry, 5 and 6 tenths divided by 7 is going to be the same answer. And then all we have to do is think, okay, I have a decimal point here. And then how many times would 7 go into 56? We can say 7 won't go into 5. I'm going to put a 0 there. How many times would 7 go into 56? That would be 8 times, which would make 56. And then leave us with 0, okay? So here I have 0 and 8 tenths would be this answer here, okay? So let's look at that other example I had. Now that's actually a lot like this one. So basically here, if I have 56 hundredths divided by 4 tenths, my goal is to make this divisor a whole number. So I can do that just by jumping 1 over here. Now again, this is where we can start to learn the quick and easy way to do it. If I do 1 jump here, I got to do 1 jump here. Now again, I'm saying do a jump, but really what I'm doing is multiplying by a power of 10. But I'm using that little shortcut we've learned over time with how we can make our numbers change with mental math. Okay, so if I know I can make this a whole number by moving 1 to the right here, I do the same thing here, and then I'll get the same answer. Now again, notice I've moved the decimal here to make it 5 6/10, and so I'm going to place that decimal in my quotient in the same spot there. So this is going to work out the same way. How many times would 4 go into 5 in this case? Once, and that's going to make 4. And again, notice I've moved my decimal here because I moved it over by doing the same thing to both dividend and divisor. That's going to make 1. Again, the math works out the same as these other 2 examples we've done. 16, 4 goes into 16 4 times, makes 16. Subtract, we get 0 left over. So here we have a final answer of 1 4/10. So 0 5600ths divided by 0 4/10 makes 1 4/10. So again, we do that. The big goal is to make this divisor a whole number by moving the decimal places as we need to, and then do the same thing there. So again, I didn't make this 56, I just moved 1 place over. I do whatever I have to do here to make this a whole number, and then I can do the same thing here to make it even out, and then I'll have the answer that I want, okay? So that's our big idea here. Let's go ahead and look at our next page. I'm going to go to 324. Okay, now they give us another example here that we can work through. Now, it tells us we can estimate. Now, if we estimated this, we could just say 4 divided by 1 would be about 4 for our answer. So we can think of it in that way. 4 divided by 1 would be about 4. We could also do compatible numbers and call it 3 6/10 divided by 1 2/10. Be about 3. So we're thinking our answer is somewhere between 3 and 4. Okay. The powers of 10. Let's just think of this like moving our decimal over 1 place here to make 1 2/10 12, which is like 1 power of 10, which makes 12. And then we'll do the same thing here. Again, we're going to make this, but since we did just 1 power of 10 for our divisor, we're going to do 1 power of 10 for our dividend as well. So again, we're not going to move that till it gets the whole number. It's going to do whatever we did for the first one. We're going to do that for the second number too. Okay, so that becomes 37. Oops, 37 2/10. I should put that over here. All right, so really what we're going to do is think, okay, it's a lot easier to think of dividing 37 2/10 divided by 12 as opposed to 3 7/200 divided by 1 2/10. But this is, again, going to work out the same for us here, okay? So let's go ahead and look through that real quick. I'm going to try to speed it up and get through it. So how many times would 12 go into 37? Would be 3 times, which would make 36. Subtract out, we get 1. Bring down to 2, we get 12. How many times would 12 go into 12? Of course, that's 1. And we have 0 remainder. Now again, notice here when we move that decimal to make it 37 2/10, I'm going to place it right above, so I get 3 1/10 for my answer. Okay, so there's that. Now the other ones we're going to do, I'm going to leave you guys to try this on your own here. Now they have the check step that we can do where we're going to multiply an answer. So notice here, 1 9600ths divided by 14. If I want to make, there's 1400ths. If I want to make that 1400ths a whole number 14, I'm going to go 1 jump here and 2 here to make it 14 there. And then I got a whole number divisor, which is a lot easier to work with. And then I want to do the same thing with my dividend. So here I did 2 jumps. So in this case, I am going to do 2 jumps here as well, which is, so this is like multiplying by 100. And then I've got that there. So we're going to place our decimal above wherever we moved it to. Okay, so we're going to put that there. And then you guys can go ahead and work that one out. Now, when you get your quotient, I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to be a whole number quotient because we have our decimal all the way over here. And then if we do the check step, we're going to take 1400ths, our original divisor, and multiply that by our whole number quotient, and we should get, again, back to that original dividend that we had, and that's the way we can do our check step, okay? So I'm going to leave you guys to try this one out. Again, we've set it up. We're really doing 196 divided by 14, which is, again, that's the goal, is to take our divisors and make those into whole numbers, and then just make a little adjustment with the dividend that's going to help it all work out the same. Okay, so big goal is to get to where we're just basically working through regular long division and taking care of those decimal points, okay? After that, you've got number 1 through 6 on page 325. So in our next video that you'll see tomorrow, we'll check those over and then we'll kind of keep going, okay? So again, hope you get into this one. Hope you're back in the swing of things. Hope you're having a good day. And I'll see you for some more math next time. All right, bye-bye, guys.